Hey YouTube, Gilly Monster, and you are looking at my next Nerf mod project. I've already done the voltage mod to this, as you can see by the rerouted wires, as well as the soldering marks. I've rigged it to run off four 3-volt Surefire flashlight batteries, as well as done the compartment modification necessary to mount those batteries. You can check it out in the video right here. And what I plan on doing next is fully, or what I would think would be fully minimizing this Nerf gun, which basically I've seen people do modifications where they center how well the magwell sits, as well as voltage mods, removing the false barrel, removing the bit right here. But what I've never seen anybody do is get rid of this dead space right in here. And what I plan on doing, how I do that, is basically where this little tab is right here, cutting in parallel up probably about a 45-degree angle, and it'll essentially be taking out probably about 2 inches worth of material, as well as doing that up into the tactical rail. But first I'm going to salvage that so that way I can still use it. After that I'm going to cut actually the same amount out of the barrel, and I'm essentially going to be taking this front half and moving it. Alright, this is just a progress update. I made the first cut, as you can see here. I've done taken away this little connecting piece right here, as well as cut off the first half of the tactical rail, and also have taken out the center section piece. As I said before, as I've said in actually my battery compartment mod video, it's best that if you want to do something, say cut it about 1.5 inches wide, go ahead and cut just on the inside of either line, so that way you've got a little bit of extra room to play with, just in case things don't pan out quite the way you thought they would. So yeah, up next will be the final cuts. Alright, the major cuts have been done, including the barrel, which I have right here. Everything has been cut down and equaled out in length. I've smoothed out these cuts about as best I can with basic hand tools, which means Dremel, file, as well as basically a sanding bit. I've saved enough of the tactical rail so that way I can mount it back later. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that, but basically so that way I can still use Nerf accessories. Here are the scraps. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with these pieces. I'm pretty sure I can find something else though, so because they're more or less intact. But the next step is going to be adding the plastic weld and joining the different halves using hot glue as an initial bond to hold everything together. And we'll come back. Here we go. I've already made sure everything is all properly lined up, and I've used hot glue as the initial bonding material. Basically, this is just temporary. The real meat is going to come from the plastic weld, which I have sitting in a jar. You might be asking, why is it sitting in a jar full of water? What I did is I took the water and I heated it up for about 50 seconds, and then I just put the epoxy in there, so that way hopefully after a couple of minutes sitting in there it should come out nice and malleable and ready to be worked into the seams and help hold my Rayven together. Hey, it's Gilly Monster again. I'm back, and I just got done adding the last of the plastic weld that I had bought. It's basically epoxy putty meant specifically for plastics. I'm just waiting for this a little bit to dry. Something else I did is I took some wire hanger and cut off about inch-long segments, and just put 3 of them underneath here to add another level of strength. The only other parts I have to do is this little corner up here, is the same spot on the other half of the shell. I've already given this thing the voltage mod. As you can see by the read-on wires, I just have to reconnect them to the battery pack. And the whole thing that started this project was the battery cover. So this is with acrylic plastic as well as the plastic weld. So I'm just going to wait for the other half of the shell to finish setting, sand down the exterior, make it all nice and smooth. Probably end up cutting off this old tactical rail and either salvaging it from what I had before, or taking it completely off of one of my other gutted Nerf guns. But after that, I'm going to put the halves together and give it a paint job, and I think that'll about wrap it up for this. See you then. Hey, just another status update on my Rayven project. I've gone and finished up the joining of the two separate halves. There's still a seam right here, so future repairs can be made, as well as on here. And I've also taken what's left of the plastic weld and put a little bit here inside of the pistol grip, both here, here, and up here, as well as the original, that little strut's original attachment point. And the whole purpose of that is, instead of filling that in with plastic weld, what I intend to do is I took some of the acrylic in my heat gun, made a cardboard cutout of both of those gaps, and I'm going to take some screws and my drill and essentially mount a nice smooth cap. And then once those are mounted, I'm going to paint it, as well as another little defining feature. I like to give each Nerf gun something special, and this is actually the interior barrel of a Zombie Strike Sledgefire, the break open shotgun Nerf gun, and cut it down to size. And here's another, I guess, barrel attachment feature that I had just kind of laying around, and I have done both plastic weld in here as well as ABS cement on the outside once the plastic weld was hard enough to where I could just cut it off with a razor blade. Once this is all dried up, I'll go ahead and sand it down and paint it probably flat black, with the exception of, I don't know, probably about 1.5 inches or so here, so that way it still maintains that orange safety tip. And I'll have another update soon.
Okay, so my mini Rayven is finished. Everything is set. Everything is properly painted. Yeah, it's completely finished. Going over the details. The tack rail has been reinstalled, and it's still fully functional, including the accessory tooth. It sits about a 1/16 of an inch higher, though. I used ABS cement to reattach it, each one to its respective half of the shell, so you can still take it apart if you need to. But complicating that down here, it didn't quite work out the way I planned. Here we have the caps that I used to fill in the gap that the strut left once I cut it off. I used a cardboard cutout to shape the initial plastic pieces I was going to use to fill that in, but it wasn't quite big enough, so I ended up having to use hot glue to fill it in. But that's okay, because once it painted over, it lends it an almost rubberized look. So I think that's pretty cool. Here we have the overall seam. I actually gave this all an initial paint job with Tester's OD Green modeling spray paint. The same thing. It was actually a Krylon black for all the black pieces. I taped it off and then went over it with a Tester silver, and I gave it an airbrush effect to make it look a little bit worn. The seam was actually used to be a lot uglier, but I was like, I don't like it, and so I went back over and sanded down the paint, resanded everything. So now I think that actually looks pretty clear, considering I literally cut this Nerf gun in half. But the worst part of it is this bit up here, and that's just because of these pieces up here. It's hard to make this look uniform with these. Just because, you're going from having ridges and smooth and basically having to be hand-shaped just because it was in an awkward place. But going on the other side, this particular bit actually was this particular point was probably about a good inch, maybe 1.5 inches longer, and I'm actually really surprised at how well that turned out. You can almost see, there's only a little bit of deformation right in here, so I think this has actually turned out to be very successful. The thing that I had to ask myself, though, probably about halfway through, is like, what is the point of minimizing a Rayven like this? And it's like, it really serves no purpose at all, because it barely fits my hand. I guess I'm of average height, and average size. So I mean, it barely fits my hand. It basically turned it into, I guess, a pistol by now, just because it's so small. But the only other place I can think of minimizing it would be right up in here. If you're wanting to keep the overall aesthetic of the gun, is cutting out probably about an inch right below these sling clips right here. But I don't plan on doing that. Doing this, for what I get out of it, was way too much work. But I don't know. It turned out to be interesting. It was fun. It was informative, and everything still works perfectly. I think this next bit looks kind of ridiculous. This is actually the suppressor bit from my Nerf ODST SMG, and it's huge compared to this gun. But I think it looks pleasantly overdone. But that's about it. Up next is slideshows with detail shots, as well as a firing demonstration. Thanks for watching. Okay, minimized Nerf Rayven firing test. 12 round clip. Okay, so not too bad, but I think as a standard procedure, I think I'm just going to re-grease everything in all my mods from now on.